I'm going to start this video with a scenario. So you've got two candidates going for the same C-suite role. You've got one candidate, perfect on paper, great resume, has done this role many times over the last few years. And then you have another candidate, candidate two, who has some obvious experience gaps. Now it might surprise you to hear this, but the company in this scenario actually chose the candidate with less experience. That wasn't despite the experience gaps, it was because of what the interview revealed about how they think. So over the next 7 to 8 minutes, I'm going to deconstruct exactly what the CEO saw, and I'm going to give you some skills and some ideas as to how you can develop that same capacity. The CEO and board chose the less qualified candidate because they believed that this person would grow and evolve with the role over time, while the perfect candidate had plateaued. They were looking specifically for and hiring specifically for something called growth capacity. Now, if you're already at a senior level, you've probably been demonstrating this your whole career. You just don't have the language for it. Now, this is problematic because it means that you can't leverage it in interviews, you can't accelerate it deliberately, and you definitely can't optimize for it when it matters most. So let me break down exactly what growth capacity is, why it matters more than ever. I'm going to give you 7 specific approaches for developing it deliberately. Now, if you tap out this video early, just try and stick around until you get to number 3. Number 3 is I believe, the one that most executives completely miss, but it is probably the most important. Okay, so growth capacity is not just performing well in the job that you do today. Okay, growth capacity is your track record of taking on roles with greater scale, greater complexity, and greater ambiguity over time. It's about growing with a role when it inevitably expands, or it breaks, or it completely changes around you. You know, you can be brilliant at the role that you do right now and still have limited growth capacity. You know, perfect execution in your current scope, it means absolutely nothing if you can't scale when the complexity doubles or the market shifts. Think about your own career for a second. Do you remember that moment when you realised that the skills that got you promoted weren't quite enough to help you succeed in that new role? That discomfort when you had to figure something out that you'd never done and you had to do it in real time? Well, that is growth capacity in action. Now, I see this pattern consistently in executive search and coaching. Super smart, highly accomplished leaders who suddenly feel stuck operating 6 inches in front of their face instead of thinking strategically. And here's an interesting point. Strategic hiring managers don't hire for today's job. Okay, they're hiring for tomorrow's unknown. And if you've made it to a senior level within your organization, you've proved this capacity over and over again. Okay, I'm going to paint this picture without being alarmist, okay? It isn't 2008, it's not 2020, we're not in a crisis mode. I think actually we are in something which is maybe even harder to navigate. We're in this grinding, competitive market. The rules are shifting, the world is changing around us. Economic uncertainty has tightened hiring. The talent market is super crowded at the moment. There are loads of really, really good leaders out there on the market, either looking for roles or sort of dipping their toe in the market to see what's going on. You only have to look at LinkedIn for 5 seconds to see the application numbers have skyrocketed. People are petrified about AI. And look, a word on that: AI displacement anxiety is, it's pretty it's anticipatory, but it is really, psychologically very, very real for a lot of people. And a word on AI. AI is not. It's not going to replace the entire workforce anytime soon, but it is doing an increasing amount of work that senior leaders used to do. AI can now handle up to 80% of the CFO prep work. It can create presentations in minutes that used to take us days and days to finish. It can draft strategy decks at a fraction of the time it would take even the most talented McKinsey consultant. These are all things that you maybe fall under the banner of like technical competency. So the things that executives spent decades building, these things are all becoming commoditized at an accelerated rate. So what becomes super valuable? Well, really anything that AI can't replicate. So adaptive thinking under ambiguity, leading through unprecedented change, making judgment calls with incomplete data, building trust across conflicting agendas, really anything that helps you grow into complexity that doesn't exist yet. So growth capacity is becoming a primary differentiator just because of this. And it really is it's the differentiator between leaders who stay relevant and those who get displaced. Okay, so growth capacity doesn't just happen from experience. It comes from how you process that experience and how quickly you can put that into action. So here are 7 ways to help you build it deliberately. Now, you're probably doing some of these already. The question is, are you doing them systematically or are you doing them by accident? Okay, number 1, increasing your cognitive range. Most people think getting better means getting deeper. Growth capacity comes from getting wider. Okay, so if you're in finance, spend time understanding product. If you're technical, force yourself to get into more of a people or leadership role. Ask yourself questions like, what decisions am I making today that I couldn't have made 2 years ago? If your answer is none, then your growth has stalled. Okay, number 2, practice learning agility under pressure. Run experiments, don't wait for the perfect plan, test, iterate, see what breaks, adjust it fast. Compress your feedback loops. Don't wait for annual reviews. Okay, the leaders who grow fastest learn in motion, not after the fact. Number 3, upgrade your emotional capacity. This one is what most people miss. Okay, as you move up, emotional load increases faster than technical load. More conflict, more ambiguity, more scrutiny. Most people plateau not because they're not smart enough, but because they hit their emotional ceiling. Can you stay regulated under pressure? Can you separate your identity from the outcomes? Can you actually hear feedback without getting defensive? Look, feedback tolerance is a growth limiter at senior levels. If you can't hear hard truths, you simply cannot grow. More responsibility isn't growth if you're just doing the same thing you already know how to do. That's horizontal scaling. Vertical challenges force you to think differently, not just work harder. Ask for assignments that scare you a little bit. If everything feels comfortable, you are not growing. Number 5, shift from doing to orchestrating. Now, this one creates resistance because it goes against what made you successful in the first place, what got you here. Being the person with all the answers is exactly what's going to keep you from getting to the next level. You have to move from solving problems yourself to designing systems that solve problems without you. If you're still the bottleneck, if you're the hoarder of knowledge, your growth capacity is capped. Number 6, build systematic reflection. Experience without reflection is just repetition. After major decisions or projects, ask yourself, what worked, what didn't, what would I do differently? Most leaders skip this step and wonder why they keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Number 7, use constraint as training. Now this one sounds backwards, but growth capacity actually gets built when you don't have enough time, enough resources, or enough clarity around a situation. Constraint forces you to think differently. Don't avoid it, lean into it. That's where this muscle gets built. Look, the reality is this. If you're building your future career on what you can do today, you're building it on sand. If you're building your future career on your capacity to grow into what's needed for tomorrow, you're building it on bedrock. Remember that candidate from the beginning? The CEO wasn't looking for someone who already knew everything. They were looking for somebody who had the capacity to grow into complexity that didn't exist yet. That is what made the difference. Most leaders build this capacity intuitively, but the ones who can build it systematically, who can name what they're doing, they can diagnose their gaps and deliberately construct the conditions of their own development, those are the ones who are going to keep ascending. You don't need to be perfect at all 7 of the ideas or the suggestions that I made. Just pick 1 or 2, test it for 30 days or 60 days, see what happens. So which protocol are you going to test first? Drop me a comment. I'm genuinely curious about what resonates and where you are right now. If this has changed how you think about your career trajectory, or if anything in here has really given you that big aha moment, let YouTube know. Comment in the comments section. What I'd love for you to do is subscribe to the Next Move Lab. We're going to be putting out a ton of information and a ton of content on executive growth and leadership strategy over the next few months. Also, on the topic of growth capacity, if you want to go deeper, check out the description. I've added a link to a recent article that I put out there. It goes into a huge amount more detail. Hopefully it's useful and interesting. I've also added some interview questions that I use with candidates every day. And these are specifically focused on assessing growth capacity. So hopefully they're useful. If you're a hiring manager, please feel free to use them. If you're a candidate, there might be some useful, almost like coaching questions that you can use in there to help sort of build up that growth capacity muscle that I talked about earlier.